この旅はこんな私を選んでくれてどうもありがとう
Hi! Thinking of applying for JET? So I've just started my third year on JET and figured that now knowing what I know about the program and the kinds of people in it, I would share my personal opinion on applying and interviewing for JET. If you're only interested in interview advice, feel free to skip ahead. So your first step is the application. I assume you all know how to fill out paperwork, so this will mostly be some general points of advice to keep in mind when filling out your application and writing your essay. So number one, be honest with yourself. Know what you want out of your experience in Japan and on JET. Don't apply with the attitude of, oh, I don't care where I go as long as I get to go to Japan. This attitude can be quite dangerous and very idealistic. Know your capabilities and your limitations. I, for example, knew that I didn't want to drive in Japan, so on my application form I wrote that I didn't have a license even though I did. Number two, research some of the lesser known areas of Japan for your preferences. I didn't, and I know that I wish I had. Don't get me wrong, I love Okayama, but knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have bothered putting down Chiba as my top preference. Prefectures around Tokyo are usually very competitive, and you have to be realistic about your chances of being placed in any one particular area. You may get your preference and you may not, so it's good to do a bit of reading beforehand anyway so you can make an informed decision. And three, think about how JET will benefit you in the long run. Not all of you have degrees directly related to JET, and that's okay. You may have skills, connections, hobbies, passions, interests that will still work in your favor. Think both about what you can do for JET and what JET can do for you. At the end of the day, JET wants people who will give them and your country a good name. They want people who take the program seriously, and if you don't have any long-term goals, they might not think that you do. So you've sold yourself and gotten an interview. Good on ya. I believe the interview is where they mostly try to gauge your personality, whether you are reliable, resilient, and just generally a palatable person. So this is a run-through of the kind of questions that I was asked, how I responded, and maybe how I wish I'd responded. Wind, why? So first I remember they asked me the most general and obvious question, why JET? I basically went on a bit of a ramble about how coming and working in Japan was my dream. And it's been in the back of my mind since high school. Letting them know that you've thought long and hard about your choice to come to Japan is a good thing, but I don't like how idealistic I must have come across. Lots of people come to Japan because it's their dream, and many of those people are disappointed. Visiting a place and living and working there are two very different things. Think about your statement of purpose and try to rehash some of those points. Why is JET a good fit for you, and why are you a good fit for JET? Then I remember them asking me some specific questions about my application, like my academic credentials and preferences, yada yada yada. Don't be afraid to take a second to think about your answer and try to avoid cliches. People can tell when you aren't being genuine, and the whole purpose of the interview is for them to see genuinely who you are. I don't think I did so bad in this part. I just tried to appear passionate and interested about my studies and interests and things like that. I answered all their questions pretty simply and directly and honestly. So then I was asked about my country. So things like how I plan to represent my country, what I plan to show people. Here I hit a bit of a wall. I told them that I was quite interested in sharing things about Australian art, and I told them about my interest in children's books. So immediately after this, they went on to asking me what kinds of Australian media will you show them, and I just drew a blank. When preparing for your interview, do some research on your own country. What would you show or say if you had to give a presentation on the fly? about your country, chances are you'll have to do this on JET. So it's good to think about these things ahead of time anyway. Just a hint, for example, if you are from America, things like the Statue of Liberty and hamburgers aren't interesting. What more unique cultural things can you share with the people of Japan? I was also given some quite difficult what-if hypotheticals. So the first one was, how would I deal if my employer approached me and said that they didn't like Australians because one of their relatives had been killed by an Australian in World War II? I think my answer here was okay, just a little bit long-winded. I said I would just try and deal with the facts and not let any emotions or political ideas get in the way. I think with any questions like this, you have to try and be diplomatic. It's just a matter of fact that they don't want people who are going to strongly socially or culturally or ideologically clash with Japanese people. They want people who can remain peaceful and professional even when faced things that might be upsetting to them. I've heard a somewhat common question women are asked about how they would respond to sexual harassment or assault. These kinds of questions are really difficult, but you just have to think about how you would handle them in a peaceful and professional way. The other what-if question I got was what I would do if I was placed in a very remote area. I said that I was aware that that was a reality of the program, even though my preferences were placed around major cities. I also said that I wouldn't have applied for JET if I wasn't willing to accept that reality. I think this was an okay answer, but I kind of broke my own rule a little and lied. If I had my time again, I probably would have just admitted that, yeah, living in an isolated place would be hard for me. But I have the experience and resources available to deal with that kind of stress. It's okay to admit that some things will be challenging because they want somebody who is realistic about the job and the experience. They don't want somebody who's just trying to say the right things. I actually didn't get any questions about teaching, and I think that's because my degree is in teaching. I guess maybe they assumed that I could teach. But if you're not a teacher, try looking up some sample ALT lesson plans or activities or games just to get an idea of the job before you go into the interview. It is possible that you'll get questions about games you might play in class or how you might teach a specific point. So in summary, be honest, be genuine, and try not to ramble on like I did, and try to take off the rose-colored glasses. Be honest about the challenges that you think that you'll face on JET and show the interviewers that you have strategies for handling difficult situations. Okay, so that's all from me. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask. Bye!